Okay, welcome. I'm Andy Lee Graham. I've traveled nonstop I've lived abroad for 25 years and in 114 countries. And I've gone through a lot of stress in my life. I'm going to give you a quote that I just wrote. One stressor subtracts 5 to 10 items from your daily to do list. A significant event, such as a death of a child, spouse, or parent, can remove 5 to 10 to do things on a daily basis for the next 2 or 3 years. Okay. But I've been realizing that it's really been evident since my business I shut my business down that I don't have very many stressors. And it's real easy for me to accomplish stuff. But when I have a stress, it basically detracts from my energy or force to go do something positive, right? And so it's really a balance, a positive against a negative. And the more negative you have, the more you come to a complete stop, right? Okay. But I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for 37 years. And I truly explain this. Sometimes you give a lead or you talk about these things, but I don't like to do that. But pretty much stress is a trigger. There's different types of stress, right? Every kind of stress. And it's a trigger to go drink a coffee, to eat comfort food, go work. Some people go work just so they don't have to deal with their stress, right? There's millions of ways. Well, that's not true, billions, but there's a lot of ways that we deal with stress. And there's socially acceptable ways like going to the gym or exercising, and there's unacceptable ways like arguing with your husband or wife. And truly, you get an endorphin rush, a uh, a buzz when you have an argument. So a lot of people go for that buzz. You get a buzz when you drink alcohol, right? So everybody's trying to go for the buzz, right? Okay. Um, this is kind of a mathematical equation. So you gotta balance it. When I talk about drinking, I say obviously if you're drinking, you got all these triggers, you got to somehow shut off all those stressors, right? But what is a stressor? A stressor is a word, stressor. A stressor is to me a nail. Okay, somebody pounds a nail in your head, that's a stressor. But you could think that your wife just bitched at you, stressor. Your husband just bitched at you, stressor. These are nails, and they're hard to get out of your brain. And this everybody says don't take it serious. That's just crap advice, okay? There is no way you're going to totally ignore a stressor unless you're a sociopath. Okay, a sociopath, psychopaths have no conscience, they have no remorse, so basically they can ignore it. So a lot of very good business people are sociopaths because they have no remorse by doing anything they do. Okay, but a stressor. So I like to think of them as nails. So how many nails do you put in your head that are stress? How many nails do you put in your head that are positive things? Right? So you got these balance going on. And there's people that are constantly giving themselves their own stressors by saying, "Oh, I have shit for brains," or things like that, right? Their self-talk is so horrible that you're going, how can you ever be a success in life when the basic cheerleader of your life is a negative person? But okay, but time slowly heals big stresses like a divorce or marriage. I mean, a child dying or something, and it really does eventually go away. My mother died, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, and it's finally to the point where I'm totally okay with that. Okay, I wasn't okay. I felt like the doctors had not done their job, and that God had betrayed me and took my mother from me, right? But it's my mother, right? So when your mother gets taken away from you, you're like a little kid again, right? Okay. Don't think that anybody is above stress. Anybody that acts like they just don't think about it is lying. They basically are in delusion. They basically have no ability to deal with stress because a person that's had a lot of stress knows a lot of ways to do it. On the other side is, how do you learn to do stress? You have something stressful and you just grin and bear it and you live through it. And you don't go get drunk, you don't do drugs. You basically come up with a coping skill. So you're developing a coping skill. Some people find themselves living in the negative column all their life. And a lot of expats are in the negative column all the time, and they will not talk with their family, they won't talk with their wife, their children. They basically don't want anything to do with the USA, so they travel abroad. I started traveling because the positive nails in my head were really good. I met a Norwegian girl, Greta, and I thought, the stress at home compared to the travel, yeah, I'm gonna start traveling. I wasn't going to benefit by doing it, but drinking there's an advantage type of drinking, and then there's a destructive type of drinking. 2 or 3 drinks is a mild way. Getting blotto is to drink every single night of the week is a habit, okay? And when people ask how they became an alcoholic, what they did is they had the habit of drinking every single night of the week, and it was a habit. They had to have that drink. They didn't think they had to have that drink. But one day something happens, like their wife divorces them, and then it goes off the edge, right? So what was just a calming thing, they had to really drink way too much. So what is an alcoholic? It's a person that drank too much too often. You can come up with 1,000 reasons why they drank, but it doesn't really matter, okay? Okay, but it's a lot to do with stress, and so is eating. People go to dinner every night. That's a comfort food. They eat. Overweight people are addicted to food. But in defense of them, the sugar that's put into the food is extremely addictive, okay? People are workaholics, people are sexaholics, people are pornaholics. You've got more types of aholics than on the planet. And I have realized that almost everybody has had a world life-changing trauma in their life that they probably didn't resolve. And you can always find out if they got a trauma. It's because if you accidentally talk about their trauma, the conversation trips over to what they're really stressed out about, they kind of go berserk. It's a little bit interesting. But approximately 30 years ago, more or less, my life was a disaster. I was managing 235 rental properties, real estate, with 235 people paying rent. But then we had like 3 or 4 or 2 people in each unit. So there's a lot of people. And they all thought it was their right to call me and give me an excuse on why they weren't going to pay the rent. Okay, amazing sometimes. I was also involved in selling 50 to 95 pieces of real estate per year. Now that was all positive nails, because I had a way of getting rid of the people that tried to be mean or aggressive or anything. I would not sell to a mean person, so I didn't really have much stress on selling. And I never had a bad closing but one time. And a bad closing is when you don't do the contract right. It was a challenging period. Every day was filled with continuous activity. Despite the constant demands, I was generally happy. I was happy. I would stop in the coffee shops. In between appointments on selling something, I would stop at every single bar, restaurant, whatever, and basically flirt with the girls. I maintained a routine of going to the gym daily. So every day about 5 or 6 or 7, I would go to the gym for an hour, and I'd have happy hour, right? Happy hour at the gym. I spent times in coffee shops, conversations. I was a man of the city, right? I was stopped at 5 or 6 bars every night. And if nobody was there, I'd go to the next bar. And these were not bars. They were yuppie places, right? Hangouts where the movers and shakers of the city were drinking. Okay, I didn't drink, but drank a lot of grapefruit juice at the time. I was rather laughing. I had a guy, Tony, that I'd seen him in the bars for years, and he never realized I didn't drink. And I was like, he goes, "Here, let me buy you a drink." And I said, "No." And it was like 6 years after I'd seen him in the bars, and he goes, "You don't drink? I see you here all the time." Okay. However, my real estate business never reached that point where there's a point in a business, usually around 11 years, where the money just starts piling up and you've basically done all the problems and you solved them and you're doing only the good nails in your head and very few of the negative nails. But I was also a continual, I always was experimenting. I spent a lot of money on experimenting. I bought a computer and paid $5,000 for a computer that you can get for $100 now, and paid a guy like $1,000 to put a caller ID program on. Oh, this is what you can do you can do this on your phone right now, right? It was a roller coaster. My life was a roller. I'm just a normal American man. Okay, I'm a normal, like everybody that's watching right now that's working. I was just a normal person. Okay, but I had a different type of life because I was self-employed. So all these things were my own choice, right? But what happens is and this is an institutionalization of people is they go to work and they're told to stay busy all day and they become institutionalized. If they're not being busy, they don't feel right. It's like somebody in prison. Somebody in prison only feels safe in prison. A person that's worked for 30 years only feels safe if they're doing something. So it's amazing when I see these people on vacation or traveling culturally or something like that, and they got a checklist of things to do. The worst boss they have is themselves. Okay, but this is stress, human doing. So purely elective stress, and even when they're not working, they create a checklist of things they got to do. I call it human doing. Okay, it's kind of uh, a way of not dealing with your emotions. Because when you stay busy, the worst thing you can ever do to get over a problem is stay busy. Because you're not actually resolving the emotional problem. You're basically allowing the brain to not think about it. Okay, but stress. Stress is an interesting thing. It's absolutely common in the overdeveloped countries, the 25 countries that have nothing to do with the other 200 countries. Like here, the average person makes 20, say 15 to $30 a day. While in the United States, they make 15 to $30 an hour. I mean, it's nothing the same. And the people don't work here hard at all. They are barely working. I'm always laughing when they get real upset if you interrupt their almuerzo, their lunch, right? And by the market starts at about 8 or 9 and then ends by 2 o'clock. So the people working in the market, what do people do mostly on the planet? They kind of cook food all day, but they have their houses free and paid free and clear, and their family thing. Okay, so I'm having this horrible disaster life up to my ears with things. Henry David was my Thoreau from age 16. I thought he really made sense. He said, if you worked only to buy the necessities of life, you really didn't need to work very long. And when I went to university, I had $25,000 in 1974 or 75 in my bank account. And I had loaned my father like $3,000 to buy a truck. Can you imagine buying a truck for $3,000 now? Okay, but when I read this thing, what made sense in this chapter, economy, was that I didn't only work for necessities. Now, what does that have to do with stress? 95% of your stress is about the superfluous wants and desires. And so you buy something like a bigger house, a bigger car, a bigger house, a bigger car, a bigger house, the more the stress, right? The bigger the thing. So you're always increasing the summation of all the different stressors in your life. But then you have the triggers. I'm not really talking about this in this book because I'm just basically setting it up for other chapters. But we have triggers. So if you know your triggers, all you got to do when you go get drunk or you go do drugs or you go eat something is document what the trigger was and then try to figure out how to get around that trigger without eating or drinking, whatever. I'm always laughing. I've gone carnivore right now, and I walk by a bread shop, and there's a trigger. Walk in and get some anise bread. Okay, it's really hard to avoid. I mean, it's like my brain just walks in, and then there's this really nice young girl in there that's really laughing and joking at this new one. And, oh man, I got two triggers: a nice person to go talk to, and a anise bread that's fresh, right? Okay, so what happened that changed my life and I started traveling? There was a woman in my life that pounded a nail in my head that I couldn't get out. And it came to the point that it was a wooden stake like a vampire, right? She jacked with my brain to the level that it was one of those things like, why am I doing anything, right? And this is a question that people refuse to ask themselves. Why am I living? What is the reason for life? And everybody asks that question, and some people think about killing themselves, but they're in complete denial that they've actually thought about killing themselves. I think everybody thinks about killing themselves. Divorce is one of the tragedies of life. It's a nail, a gigantic railroad spike into your brain that you cannot remove. Oh man, I really, really have to avoid it. I've had my heart broken 3 or 4 times, which isn't the same as making a lifelong commitment, right? But, I lost like 25 pounds one time when this girl just dropped me out of the blue. Ooh, baby, that was a horrible day. But I've had my heart broken like, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. I'm a really passionate person when I'm in love in a way. Okay, but a railroad spike is pounded in your head, and then people come along and just bam, bang that spike. So I've got friends that I know I could have screaming mad just by talking about a few things that they've basically told me about. And I'll never forget, I had a guy over in Panama Shell jump out of his seat. He said, we're all a big family in America. And he sits there and he starts screaming about Donald Trump. And I said, I mean, in a good family, you don't sit around and complain about Donald Trump all the time. You don't complain about the father. You don't blame. He says, I finally just go, how many times you been divorced? Wham! He went through the ceiling. It was so funny because I accidentally zeroed in on his, his thing. He says, it's none of your business, blah, 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 blah. And almost anybody that's got a divorce has a nail that I can hit really easily. You don't even have to think about it. And I truly think a friend should be poking at that nail. My friend Mike was really mad at the Catholic Church because he went to one of these Catholic churches. And I finally said, you're not mad at God, you're mad at the nuns. Will you stop talking about God? You're really mad at the nuns because they were really abusive or something, right? And he finally went back to church. It was amazing. But a lot of us stay busy and we deny that we have a spike in our brain. And this is dysfunctional behavior. When you deny that you have stress, when you deny that you got a few spikes in your brain, you deny that you've had trauma in your head, there's no resolution, right? You're basically going to be an angry, mean person for the rest of your life. But some people just gloss it over like always happy, always happy, always happy. I have a complete list of all my things, but I sit down with the person and talk for 12 hours about every single thing that ever happened to me that I was angry about. My biggest anger in my life was when I was like 6 years old and my friend Scott said I was a know-it-all. He did it around a bunch of young kids and basically insulted me, and from then on till about 18 or 20, I stopped talking, okay, because I didn't want anybody, and I still do this. I drive people away by doing an dandyism, by making sure that nobody ever thinks I'm very smart. Why? I don't want to be called a know-it-all. It's reliving a 6-year-old thing. My father had affairs, and I stood at the door and said, "Go away." And I protected my mom. So when I meet a woman that needs saved, I have to really walk away, right? Because I know these are things. But stress is like a fuse. It's a bomb, just waiting to happen. Again, we ought to talk about how to deal with stress, right? And that's the solution. How to deal with stress is first you can identify the triggers. So when you go berserk or you do something, you say, what happened prior to me getting angry? Then you document this stuff. And then you start thinking, how do I think it? And then you're going to just have to dwell on it until you become an adult. But most people will give themselves the right to get angry. Anybody that gives themselves the right to get angry, to me, is a wimp, okay? A man is. A woman is a wimp too. Anybody that says it's okay for me scream and holler isn't going to be my friend very much, right? I'm going to sit there and say, okay, I got to go do something else. I do not sit around and listen to people scream. But 90% of the people right now are giving themselves the right to get on X or Twitter or Facebook, everyday hobo, and scream how much they are a victim. And it's just it's not the greatest generation anymore. This is the wimp generation, right? But a lot of these people that have been traumatized become trolls. You have a troll online and you got a troll in person. They walk around being snarky with other people. So a lot of people take out all their aggression and they don't really have much stress because they're basically abusing anybody that gets around. In psychology, they find that the children that got abused as a kid, abused as a parent, right? This is psychology 101 stuff, abnormal psych and all that stuff. They want revenge. That is not that's a dysfunctional behavior. Dysfunctional behavior is why people drink. Dysfunctional behavior is the symptom. Well, dysfunctional behavior, like getting angry or whatever, the symptom is they drink too much. They do too much drugs. They workaholics. They have sex. They do all these things. These are the symptoms. They overeat. These are symptoms of dysfunctional behavior. Okay, full stop. Full stop is British slang. It means a period at the end of a sentence. But when you're talking with the Brits, they go, this keen on this. They got, I'm taking the piss, which is to wind somebody up. And sometimes they just say, full stop, meaning everybody needs to come to a complete stop. And we got to think it over. And this is what I had in my life. I had a full stop when I started traveling. I said, I don't want to deal with this, right? I am tired. I don't care what I got to do. I'm taking a thing. I lost probably $25,000 closing my business, and I didn't care. And because I was by myself and whatever, I had 55 listings at the time, and some of them were violently angry because I was their solution, right? But full stop is a pause. We're riding a roller coaster of life, and sometimes the train is running down the track and it's going nowhere, right? And this is a human doing. And I see this constantly with people. They are so busy they can't even stop to smell the roses. I call them up and they say, I got too many things on my plate, I'm busy. And I said, well, don't answer the phone. I go, gee whiz, don't answer the phone if you're busy, because you're thinking that you're going to be able to handle more, and they're really not handling anything, right? Because their self-talk is self-sabotaging everything, right? The minute you tell me you're too busy, of course you're too busy because you think you're too busy. You're not even too busy. You're just too busy telling me you're too busy, okay? And I sometimes go, oh, guys, any man or woman that sits there and tells me that is, I don't know. You want sympathy, you want to complain, you want to think that it's going to go away if you share this with one of your friends. I mean, if you have a kind of busyness that you want to talk about and resolve, you talk it over. How can I deal with this? I call up my friend Jeff and I ask him, how do I deal with the person that does this? And we're riding a roller coaster. And the Deferred Life program, but the basic, I'll say, Henry David Thoreau said, pick up your bed. No, it's beyond the power of a well man nowadays to pick up his bed and walk. This is also a biblical phrase where, I don't know what phrase it is, but it basically, pick up your bed and walk and be, a miracle was performed. And it would take a miracle for some of you doing human doing to stop and say, why did I just go berserk? Why did I get so angry at my wife? Why am I treating my wife with disgust and contempt? Contempt and disgust, there's a guy named John Gottman, Gottman. He's got the 4 horses of apocalypse, which is the 4 things that make a marriage break up. If you want to stay married, watch this video until you totally understand that you're treating somebody with this. It's almost always the same. It's the disgust. But these got 4 different features of any kind of relationship. It doesn't matter if you're married. I watched this guy talk. He's got a TED Talk and he's got a whole bunch of stuff. But you can watch it, and it's really good because it's all about relationships. How do you have a relationship? And if there's one thing I think that it should be the number one goal of any human on the planet is how to have a relationship. You go, what's that got to do with anything? Everybody that, the people that are the richest are the ones that can form the relationships the fastest, the quickest. Donald Trump is very good at forming relationships. Joe Biden is very good at forming relationships. A billionaire has thousands and thousands of relationships. And they also know how to modulate between different types of people. But basically, when somebody comes up and they start saying how their life sucks or they're hurting or they're sick or whatever, that's not a good way to form a relationship with a person that's wanting to have solutions. But when we're listening, a lot of times, it's not our job to repair another person, right? The only person who believes in the examined life, Socrates said that, an unexamined life is not worth living. So examine your stress. But again, the first rule of dealing with stress is to not run, sit there, and emotionally deal with it. When my mother died, which was probably one of the biggest stresses of my life, I fasted for 21 days. I didn't eat anything, and I sit there and I didn't do anything. I just sit there and I thought about it, and I thought about it. I didn't try to stay busy. I didn't try to do anything. I tried to do nothing, because if you really want to deal with stress, you have to sit and have an examined life. You have to, the unexamined life is not worth living. No introspection, no resolution of your problem. But it was me accomplishing something by doing nothing. That's what fasting is. But what I'm concerned with most wage slaves is they have the deferred life plan. The deferred life plan is that you're going to work for 30 days, 30 years, doing everything you hate so that you can enjoy life when you're too old to even enjoy it. Okay, it's really a wrong thing. You got to really have the daily life plan where you're basically think. So they say in real big businessmen, they work hard and they play hard. The deferred life plan is like an excuse to be miserable. I'm gonna retire, blah blah blah. And I go, but you're gonna be fat, you're gonna be old, your legs are gonna be bad, you're gonna be ugly. You're not gonna be able to have a life, right? Okay. Life is not meant to be a burden. Life is not difficult. Life is very easy, actually, especially for an American. My gosh, we can work. I can go to the United States and work for 1 month and go live in another country for 11 months. It's cheaper to live abroad than it is to do. It's cheaper to travel the world. You can be in endless traveler in those 11 months just by working 1 month in the United States. But again, necessities are cheap, luxuries are expensive, and some of you constantly have to feed yourself a luxury, and that kind of is your life problem. You've bought a house, a bigger house, and you're a maintenance man, and every single day of your life, because I don't know, you enjoy being a maintenance man on your house. I don't want a house. I managed 235 of them. I used to sell and I feel like bad, like I unloaded about 70, 80 houses a year or commercial properties on people, and they got a debt, and they have to be a wage slave. I sometimes try to talk people out of buying houses. They won't do it. They're in a feeding frenzy. How to get off a trade? How to deboard the trade? You got to full stop. You got to stop it sometimes. Maybe take off a week and actually take a vacation. Just sit there and say, why am I doing what I'm doing? What is my meaning in life? What is my mission? And then you might be able to just go like me and just have a full stop and go, wait a minute. I've got friends that tell me that I'm going to retire here. I go, you're not going to retire. I want to say, screw you. You're never going to retire because you're addicted to work. And the minute that you stop working, you would feel you have no value. Your only value in life is working. There is an integrity to being able to come up with something that defines you besides the boss doing it for you. Understand that when the boss defines who you are, you've never really become yourself. There's no self-actualization. But that's your stress. Henry David Thoreau said we're in desperate haste to succeed in desperate enterprises. Well, he's just talking about this painful existence that people say, I got to go to work. I got to go to work. No, there are people, probably 50% of the population actually enjoys going to work. They enjoy going to work more than they do talking to their wife or husband. It's kind of interesting because that's not the way it's supposed to be. But you're institutionalized. Institutionalized is when you've done something so long in an institution like work that you don't know anything else. And you feel uncomfortable the minute that you're not getting up and going to work. You feel uncomfortable that you're not listening to the boss. You feel like you're basically have a pattern and a habit so strong that you don't really know it. But you're not doing an examined life. An examined introspective life is, why am I listening to the boss? Not why are you angry at the boss, but why do I trade my time for money? Why am I trading my time working on a car? Why am I trading? I'll never forget when I was a kid, I was like 16 or 14, 15, 16. I must have been 16. I was working in the Brighton mushroom farm, and I was talking to this guy, and I had a lot of money. And this guy said, I said, why are you working here? He says, well, I want money so I can take girls out on dates. And I need a car to take them on a dates. He says, well, are you going out tonight? He says, no, I don't have enough money to buy the car. And I said, but if you didn't have the car, you'd have the time, and then you could go out with the girl. And he says, but the girl's not going to go out with me unless I have the car. And I said, well, any way you do it, you're not going to go out with the girl because you're busy working on the weekends all weekend. See, we had this job where we picked mushrooms on the weekend. Made a lot of money. And, I was piling away money for university. And he was a catch-22. I was like going, guy, just quit this job and go enjoy being in school and realize that a girl that only wants you for a car is just a prostitute, okay? That is not a good girl. She's got to realize that there's only so much money that a 16, 18-year-old kid can have, right? I was highly unusual because I worked for the farm, and I didn't like to buy stuff, so I always just piled it away. I don't like to buy anything. I've never liked to buy stuff. I like to buy little gadgets. My nickname is Gadget because I like little gadgets. A $2 gadget makes me just as happy as a $500 gadget. So, okay, full stop. The dictates of Socrates to examine our life. He's basically in reverse saying the unexamined life is not worth living. So, what are you supposed to do? Examine your life. Say a prayer to make the kingdom of heaven on earth. In the Lord's Prayer, they say that let the kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. You don't even have to believe in God to realize that that's a good thing. You make life heaven. That makes sense? Seems to make sense. Stress. I will never forget my dentist office in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I was getting my teeth cleaned. Denny and me went on a, I don't know, we went on a trip, did a bunch of cocaine. So he used to give me cheap dentist I don't know, because I was his buddy. But this lady would brush my teeth and it says, born Catholic, a little guilty for the rest of my life. And that is the human doing, and that's a lot of your stress. Interesting, if we only work for the bare necessities of life, food, shelter, and a kind word, which for me is about $10 or $20 a day, the train will slow down so slow that you'd hardly have any stress. But few people are capable of separating their wants from their needs. It's beyond the power of you to separate your needs. You will listen to this and then you will go and do something else. And you're not going to write it down. You're not going to sit there and say, make a list of my wants and my needs. You're going to say, I just got entertained and this is going to go in one ear and out the other. That is what people do. I make everything kind of a written document so I can become a better person. That's why I can travel. Few people are capable of separating their needs from their wants. They think a television is a need. It's not a need, it's a want. But in today's society, as an American, it's considered un-American to not have a car, to not have a house, to not go to work every day. That's pretty sad stuff. Okay, people say to me, Andy, you do not have to do what we do. And I go, but you don't have to do what you do either. I just made a choice. I used to do this for like 15 years, get up every day, work 18 hours a day, 16 hours a day. And I made a choice not to. And he says, but you don't do it. It's like I never done it. Okay. When I was 18, I had 2 jobs. I was working about 85 hours a week. I worked at metal spinners at night till like 11 o'clock at night, and I worked on the farm from 7 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, where I went to the second shift, right? Man, you can barely walk when you work 80 hours a week. Full stop. Stressors always exist. There is no perfect world. You will always have stress, even if you're rich. People think they're going to get rich enough to have no stress. It don't work that way. You actually have more stress when you're rich. The only way to have no stress is to stop working altogether. And that's what I kind of did. But it's a self-inflicted wound. You bought a bigger house, a bigger car, a bigger house. It's too many nails in your head, right? It's kind of interesting. Or we can just die and end it all. And that's what people do. They just pound away until the day they die. And a lot of people die the minute that they stop working because they just give up all hope for life because the only meaning in their life was work. We can just die and end it all, or we do not have to die trying to live. Okay, I'm Andy Lee Graham. I'm making this video because I was part of a book, but I really, when you have stress, sit down and say, what made me go get drunk? What made me bitch at my husband? What made me bitch at my wife? Why did I want to attack my boss? Talk it over, write it down, deal with it, actually come up with a solution, okay? And or you can just be a whining baby and always complain about it, right? And if you want to hang around with me, I'm not going to deal well if you're a whining baby, okay? Because I will basically nod my head and go, let's get the hell out of here. Okay, I don't hang around with losers. And a loser is a person that basically is a wimp all the time, whether it's a woman or a man, and basically says all the reasons why life sucks. You can hear losers just starting to talk, right? It's just kind of normal. Okay, I'm Andy Lee Graham. I'm also always available for consulting. There's a link in all the descriptions now trying to explain how to do consulting. And the consulting cost is different according to some things I want to do, right? Other things I sort of want to get paid for. But anybody that has an alcohol problem, I will definitely do that for only $25 an hour, even though I'm worth a lot. And I will basically tell you everything you need to do to probably go to a 12-step program, okay? But some of you are very rich, and you really need somebody that can walk you through how to do this without having to suffer, right? Because some of you, like a doctor or a lawyer, or, you can lose a lot of money by, you can be an alcoholic, but you can't be a recovering alcoholic. It's kind of interesting. It's a hilarious world we live in where basically people think being an alcoholic is normal, but going to any kind of self-help program to give up drinking is not. Okay, I'm here and you're not. Why not? It's because I can deal with stress. I modulate my mind and I basically come up with a way to deal with all the stresses. But I'm absolutely addicted to the rush of going into a new city. I'm addicted. I have to go to the next city. I have to go. I'm going to go to Cameroon, I think, and basically do a 14 country jump. I don't know how many there is between Cameroon. You go around the point of Africa. And eventually I'll get married and have a wife and we'll travel together and life will be good and rose colored again. And that's poetic justice. Poetic justice in a book is when the hero wins the story, not the person that's not quite sure whether they're a man, but the hero. We need heroes in our life. Be a hero of your life, or let that station be held by someone else. This is the first line of Charles Dickens' book, David Copperfield. Whether I shall be the hero of my life or whether that station is held by anyone else, these pages will tell. And I'm writing a book talking about me being the hero of my life, but I'm trying to share how to be the hero of your life and how I traveled nonstop for 25 years in 114 countries. And all of you have like 10 times, 50 times more money than me. Okay, thank you very much. Hit that button for subscribe. I always got to remember to say that. Now I'm going to go to the live thing and see if anybody has any questions. Thank you. Bye-bye. Life is good.